is government, and Sean O'Callaghan.
I guess the slowest person to hit the mute button goes last is how it works. So for the government group, we really focused on kind of public policy, and we realize there's a kind of a scale issue. Water issues can be very localized, but the framework that we have to operate in is really decided at the state level through the laws that are in place. And we recognized that different agencies have different roles. We were really talking specifically about water conservation, and an example that came up to kind of highlight two different roles is the cities of Belgrade and Bozeman. They serve as a water utility. The county might care about water conservation, but we don't serve as a water utility. So our role and how we can influence water conservation is a bit different.
Can I elaborate on that real quick, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, because in the county, the developments are on wells and septic systems, and in the cities, they're all on the public water supply and sewage. Cool.
Or in the county, they're also potentially on a water and sewer district system that the county is not involved in running. So our authority and our role is just a little bit different than someone who is a utility provider. And I think because of that, we tended to focus largely at county jurisdictional areas and what we could do to help influence water conservation. And so some of our comments were actually pretty similar to the economic group, but we were looking at informing and educating the public on water conservation opportunities. And we really looked at developing maybe some model documents that could be useful for people, some educational materials. One thing we kept talking about, and this might be another opportunity for one of the beavers, is some water-wise landscaping standards. Or sort of a sentiment that talking to developers in the county or in the city, it's not that they're opposed to using water conservation type ideas, but they have their template for their covenants, and it costs money to pay an attorney or a landscape architect to go out there and rewrite their kind of boilerplate templates. And so taking that step and coming up with some of that language that they could plug in, using opportunities to, those kind of opportunities to promote things like, low flow toilets, low flow shower heads, faucets, permeable pavers, other things that are a little bit different that have an impact on water conservation. Water harvesting, water capture was also something we talked about, informing people on how they could do it. So rain barrels, swales, things like that. We also talked about subdivision design, things like cluster development, whether that's providing continued opportunities for agriculture and agrihood, or just design that kind of gets away from a traditional irrigated park and has more naturally landscaped areas for passive recreation. Of course, the issue of ponds came up, and how they are not the most efficient use of water, and things that we could do to encourage people to not install ponds as part of their subdivision design. We also talked about some incentives and things like the city, the water utility providers, users have an incentive right now to conserve water, and that their water usage is metered, and they pay for every gallon they use. If you're on an individual well and septic, you don't have that same sort of incentive to conserve water. But I think creating that positive culture and peer influence, does have that impact. So if we could figure out a way to participate in some sort of grant program that would encourage people to install a meter on their well, so they understood how much water they were using and see the impacts of different water conservation measures, that could be beneficial. Another concept we talked about has also been raised already, a couple of them. Gray water was talked about, and gray water systems, and then encouraging subdivisions that are on previously irrigated land to try to work with ditch and canal companies to continue use of that water to provide landscaping water. And that provides carrying water for the ditch. It dilutes the operations and maintenance costs and keeps some of those ditches viable in the long term. So we really focused on informing and educating residents rather than kind of regulating. Anyone from the group have anything to add?
I'll add. So with all of that, it's hard to force this upon anyone, right? Because there's water rights, and so our and public pressure, and there's all these unintended consequences. And so, as Sean mentioned, building a model covenant for new developers to look at and maybe model after, like carrying, there could be a model of permaculture or water capture that we have as a resources for new developers. And since it's not mandatory, we can't pursue it. But if there's a lot of value added in kind of that positive peer culture, as Sean mentioned, as we kind of have our backs against the wall with COVID and environmental crisis everywhere. People are looking for examples and good modeling to follow. And that was kind of inspiring to me.
To that point, something I forgot was to develop the water-wise landscaping standards. We thought there could be a good opportunity to partner with MSU's Landscape Architecture College, and that could be a really great student project perhaps, but also right along the lines of what you were saying, and kind of the positive peer culture and peer pressure, recognizing people that are doing these kinds of things, was giving out some awards, some community awards to recognize businesses or residences that are using the kinds of designs we want to see and kind of elevate their prevalence in the community a little bit, the awareness.
Another thing that I actually didn't mention because we had so many things to talk about, but and this kind of ties in a little bit with the climate plan that the city recently adopted, and in chatting with Natalie Meyer, who kind of runs our sustainability program, we thought, there could be an opportunity to maybe develop some sort of like Gallatin green homes program or development program, or whatever you want to call it, where we could specify potentially, different things for energy efficiency and water efficiency, and then certify, either that home or that developer, or whatever it may be, in the thought that there wouldn't be a big cost associated with that. I don't know what that would look like, and it would take a lot to probably flesh out, but that's another idea, a low cost idea as well.
Jessica, this is Sue Duncan. Big Sky did discuss doing that, and I think they've implemented part of that. So you might ask Gallatin River Task Force about that.
Okay, great. Thank you.